Welcome to the 12th episode of Automation Hangout. Today we have Sriram Krishnan, Vice President of accelq, joining us. accelq is an AI-based test automation platform that supports multiple technologies as well as channels. Today, Sriram is going to share his rich experience on test automation and also walk us through some of the key capabilities of the platform. Welcome to our show, Sriram. It will be great if we can get started with a quick introduction about yourself as well as accelq.
Hey George, it's great to be here, man. Thanks for having me on the show. Hey everyone, my name is Sriram. I'm based out of Sydney, Australia, and I look after the APAC region for accelq. See, accelq, we are the leading cloud-based codeless automation platform, right? So we are a Forrester Wave leader. We got a really good industry recognition, community recognition, and also some a very large customer base who can attest to our capabilities, right?
Okay, thanks Sriram for the introduction. So we'll get started with test automation as a topic. So as you know, there has been a lot of improvements in the automation coverage since last couple of years. But at the same time, there are many automation projects that fail to provide return of investment or return on investment. For example, you may not even get a break even for the investment that you have made to develop a test automation script. So why do you think this is happening, and what are some of your recommendations on making a test automation project successful?
George, you've gone straight for the jugular there. I thought you were going to ease me in with some questions. That's all right. So, hey, look, that's quite a complex question, right, to unpack. So one of the primary problems I would say is, how you calculate your return on investment in the first place, right? So I like to think, testing essentially as like an equivalent to drinking tea, right? So essentially you test to give you that kind of calm reassurance that everything is fine with the world or the applications you've changed and built, right? Now, when an ROI of test automation is calculated, essentially the ROI is very heavily focused on just the execution part, essentially the tea drinking part. It's like, hey, how fast can I drink the tea? Right. But when you look at it, there are many aspects to drinking the tea, right? You got to prepare it. You got to have all the equipment handy. You got to have your tea bags, or if you're one of those fancy drinkers, you need to have your loose leaves and all the different combinations available, right? You need to have a kettle handy. You need to have water ready to go. So essentially test environment setup is required. There is the design aspects. There is, the setup, right? Reporting. There is, actually also one of the things that is not considered a lot is people, right?
Yep.
So people's development, people's satisfaction, right? The people's skills, right? So all of those has to be taken into consideration whenever you are trying to plan an ROI for test automation, right? So it shouldn't be, hey, it takes me X amount of person hours today to execute these tests. With test automation, I want to, halve it, right? Seems to be the only kind of goal. And what that kind of, when you have that kind of focus on just reducing the hours, right? Or if you go just by metrics-based approach as to how many more tests am I executing, right? You set yourselves up for failure because you're not looking at the ultimate aim of this exercise is to increase your quality, right? And you lose sight of that, right? And also the way you set up your automation, projects are also very important. That's your second part of the question, right? So how do you set it up for success, right? You got to make sure that your people are skilled and tooled appropriately, right? So if you take, there's two, ends of the spectrum, right? One end of the spectrum is you take your testing team who probably don't have much of automation or programming experience, and you go, hey, here is, some code automation, go learn it and do it. This is meant to give us this benefit, right?
Yep.
But not giving them enough time to soak it in, right? It's sort of the skills which you have to build up over time if you're going down like the code kind of automation route, right? Or the other end is I'm going to have a new automation team stood up who's going to automate it for me, right? Now the problem is what you're testing. So the automation part is just the how, right? And you can get skilled people who knows how to code something and come in and code it for you if you're going down that part, but then they don't know what to automate, right? So you need to have the skilled people, the SMEs who's been with your business for long, who knows where all their bodies are buried, right? So it's about, I always find that the testers are the most knowledgeable people in an organization, right? Not your BAs or devs or, even product owners, so to speak, simply because as a tester, there's many a time in my, the past where there's been some production issue something goes wrong, and a tester will be able to go, oh, you know what, that system, 4-5 steps upstream has done this, and due to this system downstream wasn't expecting that, and that's what's happened, right? Because they get that kind of end-to-end view. And without that full subject matter expertise, whatever you're going to automate is not going to give you that benefit, right? So you go and automate the easy bit, so to speak, and then you go, but still I'm stuck, because of the other critical parts I have to do test manually.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's interesting. Yep.
So when you're trying to, go ahead.
So I think the major issue that I've seen is basically the planning as well as defining the strategy for automation itself goes wrong initially, and then you will actually have an effect of that towards the implementation part. So as you said, like the processes won't be in place, people aspect won't be considered, you don't know what to automate, you won't involve the right SMEs, and then you finally end up developing a bunch of scripts which may not give you the required results. That is what I've seen. I hope you agree with me, Ashley.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So I think, there are, champions, right, who understand what needs to be done, but then where they kind of get stuck is they know what needs to be done, they know this is the cost, and they know that the return is coming at that point in time. And one of my bugbears is that we're still talking about proving the ROI for automation. Right. Yeah. So it should be like, hey, yes, you need to automate. It should be. So no one's actually asking about why do we need to do CI/CD anymore, right? Everyone's like, yeah, we need. So no one's asking about what's the ROI for CI/CD because it's understood that is intrinsic to having a very agile, reliable, software development lifecycle, right? The same way test automation is intrinsic. So the question of how do I justify the ROI should go away. I used to do these 10, 15 years ago, and I'm surprised that we are still doing it, right? Yeah. But that's one aspect of it. And second one is when these come in after a certain point in time, the easiest way to kind of, show some ROI is to say, hey, you know what, we'll save this, right? And it's always, kick the can down the line. We just hope that, all right, by in a year's time, we'll make it. You make the numbers add up and you get the approval, you put the automation in place. But as you rightly said, you haven't actually thought through the complete, strategy behind it, right? What is the initial training component, right? Upskilling component, right? How do you actually invest a bit more time maybe upfront in setting it up in a very, modular, reusable, all the best design principles, and so that you would reap the benefits for much longer.
Yep, I agree with you, Sriram. Now, coming on to the way you do test automation, what I'm saying is there's an increasing trend in the adoption of scriptless automation tool, even though there are many ways of doing test automation. For example, I can actually do scripted automation. I can use RPA tools as well as scriptless platforms. There has been a trend where the adoption of scriptless automation tools are actually going up. Why do you think there is an increase in this adoption in the recent years?
I kind of touched upon it when I said before, which is, hey, there are two ends of the spectrum. One is, you get engineers just trying to automate, but they don't know, what to automate. They don't have the SME knowledge. They don't have the kind of testing skills, etc. And on the other end is you got SME testers who's got deep experience, but who don't actually have the skills to automate it, right? Yep. And that's always, one of the big points of friction, right? Now, scriptless tools are solving that problem very efficiently, right? Now they're sitting right in the middle where they enable your SMEs, right, who's got all the testing knowledge and the know-how, the application knowledge, etc., to still provide the automation outcomes without needing to upskill themselves in a significant fashion, right? So without themselves becoming full-on developer, right, they are able to achieve the same outcomes. So that trend is now slowly catching on. So people are, businesses are starting to realize that, right? And, I also, as with a lot of the improvements that come in testing, we tend to kind of follow, the advancements in development in testing, right? They get whatever kind of development change comes in, then the same thing kind of filters on to testing a little while later. And if you look back at the scriptless development trends, right, there's been a massive growth. If you look at the rise of the likes of Salesforce and, Oracle Cloud Apps, MS Dynamics, right? So a lot of business application. Now you can have bank in a box, right? Essentially, if you want to start a bank, so it would take you probably 2-3 years. If you go back 10 years ago to start a bank, it would take you, 3 years of setting up everything, excluding the licenses, right? Just the IT infrastructure and all the applications will take you 3-4 years at least to start a bank. Now I can go and buy a banking application, right? Go to Encino or something like that and go, hey, give me a banking suite. and your business is ready to go, right? It's all just configuration. And if the applications that you're testing are becoming more and more scriptless, where the coding is not so much, right? So the room for bugs is, so testing is to find if there are any defects, right? And the room for defects becomes lesser, the lesser lines of code that gets cut, right? So now, then what you're essentially testing now is your business rules. So I already know that, okay, Salesforce, if I go and say, hey, create a lead in Salesforce, there's a form, I need to fill in 20 fields, I know that it will work. It will, save those fields successfully. Because that used to be, 5 different test cases you would write. If you, as a bespoke application, you would go and say, can I enter in everything? Is it actually recording it in the right field in the database? Is it, is it the right format? Is it doing boundary validation? This is all of those things that you have to do. You don't have to do anymore. You just go and say, hey, Salesforce, give me a create entity form with these 10 fields. These are the field types. And Salesforce is going to do that for you. Right now, you don't have to test that. So what you want to test is essentially, I have a business rule which says if I select the source as, partner, then I should give a subtype is what type of partner, right? Digital or, someone else or something to that effect. So that's a business rule. And that was a configuration. So now your testing also can mirror that, right? Your testing can also become scriptless, and you can, basically configure your test rather than having to code your tests.
Yep, so that's interesting. So as you said, you're seeing an increasing trend around the usage of package applications as well as Power Apps kind of application. That's definitely adding up to the adoption rates. And also, I think one other aspect that we need to keep in mind is the current resource market, or it's very tough to get highly skilled programmers who can actually do test automation. That's also, I believe, one reason where customers are also thinking about using scriptless tool, where you don't require a highly skilled tester or an automation or a programmer to actually derive or design your test. I think that's also one reason why we are actually having an increase in the adoption rates. We were touching upon applications, Sriram. Like one important aspect is basically there are many ways or many types of automation that you can do. You can actually automate an application, and you're touching upon workflows or business processes. So have you reached a state where there has been an increase in the automation of end-to-end testing, or basically are customers looking at automating end-to-end business processes rather than just automating a workflow that will actually be tied to an application, maybe just Salesforce alone, without actually taking into consideration the integration points?
Absolutely. So now every customer experience now involves, because of, we've gone microservices way, we've gone agile, right? So we've got federated teams. So all the modern kind of, organizations now have even a very, very simple, I was speaking at one of the events before, and I was just looking at, there's an event registration page. Right. On the back of that, there is a CRM system that it integrates to. There is a payment system that it integrates to, right? There is on part of the CRM system, there's a marketing channel that it integrates to. There is the whole, the agenda and all of that kind of, there's a mobile app that integrates. So there's just, it's an event attended by, say, about 1,500 people. And you've got probably 8 different systems at least integrated and talking to each other, right? And now most of these are bought off the shelf. So you go and say, hey, I'll buy that Salesforce as a CRM. I'm going to buy, the payments from Stripe. I'm going to buy this from someone else, etc. Right? I'm going to buy a carting from there. And you're just integrating it. Now, when my customer experience touches across all of these, now if one of these goes wrong, you've lost me. That's it. So because people are less tolerant to poor customer experiences nowadays. Yeah. Right? So I go and try to buy something on one shop and not able to complete it. I'm not going to try again 10 minutes later. I'm just going to jump to the next website that can offer it for me. Yeah. Right. So when that is now it's of utmost sense, right? Now, testing that end-to-end flow also becomes very, very important. You cannot go to production without having tested that end-to-end flow, right? Now, so there's this thing that I was speaking to one of the CIOs recently, where we were talking about race to staging, right? Where what the race to UAT, right? And what it is now all of these individual teams are all, they're all doing continuous CI, they're doing CD, and they're all building all of that. They keep pushing it, quickly goes to UAT, and then everything just parks there. Because the UAT testing takes time, because primarily it was still being done primarily manually. And you still have to do it. So there's no point in you however fast you can deliver your changes, unless it gets that whole kind of integration, end-to-end testing treatment, you can't go to prod. Right now, businesses have started to realize that, and there is a big a trend towards getting that end-to-end automation going. And accelq being one of the leading platforms which can cordlessly automate that kind of end-to-end stack into unified flows, we can see that trend loud and clear, right? So we can see almost every single customer who we're talking to come to us simply because they go, hey, I have something that can do web kind of well, that's okay. I have something that can do API kind of okay. But then my problem is that is not enough, right? My problem is I want to do someone who can do everything end-to-end well. And we go, hey, you're at the right place, right? So that is an increasingly, and I'm very happy that day is here, right? No longer is the end-to-end testing the tip of the pyramid, which everyone thinks is the hardest to do, and we will just put it away. Now everyone's looking at that as the most important piece of the puzzle.
Yep, I agree. And I think we should reach the state even where we should be actually automating the user acceptance test. For example, the business team should only be looking at the results rather than they spending time on executing these workflows on their own. Because there's very little that might change from one release to the other. But what I've seen is like the business users would actually test the entire thing because they're not confident that the end-to-end flows would actually work. And Absolutely. The second aspect that I've seen is like if you have an end-to-end testing team and a UAT team, there's a lot of overlap that happens between these two because the same workflows are actually tested in many cases between a UAT team as well as an SIT team. So you can actually get rid of many of these problems if we achieve maturity around end-to-end testing. And as you said, like accelq provides you this technology support to automate business process flows. And that's something that is very interesting because many of the tools that I've seen, which are scriptless, mostly works for digital applications. They only support basically mobile as well as maybe responsive apps, nothing like a desktop-based application or something beyond that. That's very interesting.
If you would indulge me with an example, right, of the kind of end-to-end flows that we can automate and what customers are looking for, right? So it's one of our customers who's in the payments space, right? And one of the use cases is this, which is they want to simulate someone doing a transaction, right, at one of those payment terminals. Right. So now they are doing it on a card which is issued virtually through an API. So the test essentially starts with, hey, I want to make an API call to create a new card. Now I want to use that card in the simulator to now make a simulator transaction, right? Which is a simulator, which is a desktop application, right? Now that transaction goes and hits our switching system, which is, multi-threaded, one of those legacy kind of systems, right? And which is mainframe based. It's going to hit that, right? And then it's going to go and hit another simulator at the other end, which is another desktop application. And there's some, messages going back and forth. Now the one part of the messaging is in XML. The other part is actually in a flat fixed format, right? And all of this is getting dumped to log files. Now, what happens is, so I simulate 100 transactions like that today with 100 new cards created. Now, I want to validate all the transactions have got the right messages, all the logs are reflecting those transactions. And then at the end of the day, I have a settlement process where I'm reconciling all the transactions. For this, got to go to my SAP, data services. I want to run some jobs. I want to go into multiple databases, verify all of this, calculate all of this. Then I want to jump into the customer portal where the customer can go and download a reconciliation report, which is in, XML format. And sorry, it's a PDF format. There's another report that's in XML. There's another email, which is in, Excel. And I want to verify that all of these are matching. Right now, this is business critical functionality because any of these changes, you can't go into prod because, if a transaction goes missing, the cost of that, so the transaction may be $100, but the cost of reputational damage and investigation, all of that is going to be in the thousands, right? Now, and this is the kind of, flows that now we got our customers automating and who are, and people asking more and more for such use cases.
I agree, because the focus should actually move on to end-to-end testing. I think rather than just doing automation silos around an application, I think that the example is actually a brilliant one. I think we have similar use cases in every organization around end-to-end testing, which is not an explode area in many cases. And Sriram, the other interesting trend that you have seen around development is AI. And I know that AI was mostly a topic which was actually confined to research labs, but now you're seeing a lot of advancement where AI is being applied for development as well as testing purposes. So what are some of the use cases that you can think about where AI can be used in order to improve the efficiency of test automation?
Yeah, absolutely. See, the AI can obviously, right? So the AI technologies have been evolving significantly, right? And like you
Yep.
said, the applications have also increased accordingly. Right now, we talk about test automation. AI can help with, and we use that pretty much throughout our kind of, the quality lifecycle at accelq, right? Right from design to the build to the executions to the reporting, all of that, right? So now the areas it can help with is identifying, say, the locators of your elements, right, on your web page or any application, be it, right? So now you don't have to go and scan the application, and you don't have to go and figure out every single X path, etc., and figure out how to identify that element to write one line of logic to say, hey, go and enter text here or click on that button. Yep. Right now, I can automatically go and say, hey, this is the application. Now, these are the locators. I've already decided. I already know how to identify it. Don't worry about it. Your business logic is you want to enter something, come in, say, enter text here, you're done. Right now. So with regards to the data, right now you can automatically identify, the different data types available, right? So you know that, okay, now there is a test case where I need to pass in 4 different values, right? So one of the values is, so it's a simplistic example once again. Let's say that I'm filling in, it's an insurance provider, right? And I want to get a code. I go in and there's a question says, are you a smoker, yes or no, right? Are you, a drinker, yes or no, right? And then give me your age, right? Which is, a drop down with 5 different values. And so there's going to be about 10 different sets of, data that you supply. Right now, each of these is going to have a different effect, right? So you need to try and test all these combinations. Now, earlier it used to be that you have to manually calculate all that. Now, automatically you can just go and say, okay, this is the data points. These are the available data, right? There you go. Here is your 120 test data combinations ready to run, right? It's the same test. You just want to request the code. Here it is, 120 times you can run the same thing, and it's going to, verify that it's all going nicely. Right. So now from design itself, there's a lot more there. There's, you can have AI with regards to identifying how to structure your tests together. For example, hey, you are here, you just loaded your homepage, right? Your login page. I think you can log in here. So once you log in, hey, I think in this page, you have 3-4 different things you can do, right? You can start mapping out, in accelq, we call it the application universe, right? And you start mapping out a universe where you go and say, wherever I'm at this point in flow, these are the things that I can do, right? You can smartly recognize that in this page, you can either create something or you can edit something or you can view something, right? So there's things like that, it can really help in efficiently designing your tests. Right now, when we talk about the execution part, right, and we talk about executions, it's more about the reducing the flakiness and the maintenance effect of the automation, right? So now our self-healing, right, and to be fair, there's a lot of others also coming up with similar technologies, right? Some as good as us, some still evolving, right? But then the thing is, you could have a login button, you could have which tomorrow becomes a sign-in link, right? Functionally, it's exactly the same, right? Now, you would have 500 test cases, all of which are using this. And if you are not designed, you're not designing in a very good fashion, at the minimum, you would still have to go and update that, right? And until you update that and you rerun it, you are not going to be able to find the defect, which is in the 10th screen of your application. Right? Because you can't even get past login screen. And in some cases, there's these, developer updates one library behind the scenes or something to that effect, right? And then now you got all one type of element which is used everywhere, it fails. Now you've got to go in and you've got to update almost every single page about what that element is and the attributes and all of that. Right now, with self-healing, you can, get rid of all of that. I can go and say, hey, it's still the same thing because I know with 80% certainty that it's setting the same hierarchy, it's functionally equivalent, it is taking you to the same place. So you know what? I will treat it as the same and I'll continue. So you actually find that bug in the 10th screen sooner rather than, 2 days later because you spent all this time updating a test just because, someone updated a library without even thinking how the larger impacts, right? So you can do that there with, the kind of, even the executions, right? We have what we call dynamic suits, right? What that can do is it can, at every, you can, pick up and say, hey, run my regression test, right? Every day as 5 p.m., right? You can schedule it. Or you can say, as part of the CI/CD pipeline, run my regression tests. Now, what happens is today I have 20 tests, right? Tomorrow, I may have 25 regression tests, right? Because one of the, 5 tests now are now part of the regression ones, right? You just, you don't have to go and keep updating that test suite. You don't have to go keep updating the pipeline. All you have to do is you go and say, hey, with this criteria is met, now it's a regression suite. And as soon as that criteria is met, now it's part of the regression suite. automatically. So today you would have run your automated result in your email or Teams channel would say, hey, 20 tests ran, 19 pass, 1 failed. Tomorrow it'll say 25 ran, 25 pass, right? And so there is, AI applications for AI throughout the life cycle, right? And so you got to figure out.
Very, very interesting. And I think you gave a lot of examples on where AI can be applied and how it is applied in your platform. So thanks for sharing that info, Sriram. And similar to this, Sriram, like one of the other challenges that I've seen in organizations is like they have thousands of tests to run. For example, like I've seen customers who are having like 18,000, 25,000 tests that they're running on their application. So how is that one can use a platform like cloud in order to speed up your test execution cycles?
Yeah, see, absolutely, right? That with automation comes the ability to execute more and more often. And that's one of the primary advantages of it, right? Is that you don't have to wait for, end of the sprint to run your test. Just run them as often as you would like, right? And with the agile environment that most organizations are in, changes are frequent, and with every build, every check-in, you may want to run your tests. Right now, where cloud is helpful here is it's the same thing like how cloud is helping with development, right? Earlier, you would have, say, a fixed on-prem, you have one environment, right? You have, one or two, dev one server, dev two server, and if one developers deploy something here until that's tested, you can't deploy there, right? Now, you got to wait, you're in a queue before that is okay, then that moves on to your next environment before you can apply this, etc. Right now, with cloud, what happens is everyone can have their own kind of sandbox. You can spin it up, and you can, build, you can deploy. Now, that's where now with testing as well, you can now with leveraging cloud executions, you can spin up agents on demand, right? You can go and say, hey, I have 15,000 tests. I want to get these done in, say, 2 hours, 3 hours, or 4 hours, all right? And that means I need to run, 10 tests in parallel. You want to just spin up 10, agents, right? And you can go and say, split them, execute them, right? Tomorrow you only want to run 1,000, just spin up, 5 agents, right? And then day after tomorrow, you're running 30,000 tests, right? Organization-wide, you want to spin up more. It gives you that ability to scale up and down without you having to, put in the effort to manage that infrastructure. Right. And that is that's a point that kind of, it almost liberates your team, right? Now, a lot of the customers who we speak to come in and say, oh, this is good because we are, cloud native and it's not node locked. It is not, a concurrent license where, someone else is taking the slot. I have to wait for it. Nothing to that effect, right? So they feel free. Anytime they want to build, they can build. Anytime they want to execute, they can execute because everything is available. Right at the point that you want to do. And, due to COVID, one of the, I don't know if you should call it an upside or downside, pretty much everyone's working all hours of the day, right? As you check out at, you may log off at 3 p.m. and you come back and resume your work at 8 p.m. And you don't have to go, oh, no, by the way, that is now taken by some other team. You can go and, deploy and test on the fly as you wish.
Yep. That's true. There are a lot of use cases that we can think about from a cloud standpoint. And I think customers have been very open in leveraging cloud as well since last 2 years after the outset of the pandemic. And finally, Sriram, I know that you have a lot of capabilities within the accelq platform currently, but what are some of the new capabilities that your development team is actually working on? And when is that we can actually see those in the platform?
All right. Now, firstly, our philosophy is, we are a dual engine plane, right? To simplify it, right? So one is we are constantly always, improving our existing engine, existing capability, right? That constantly gets improved. With every release, there is some of the other enhancement that's coming in, either with the usability of it or adding new functionalities on the edges of it, etc. And the other one is our innovation engine, right? So, our CEO Mahendra gets very itchy if with every release there is something to address both sides. It's never, okay, we're going to go innovation. That's it. We're done with whatever we can do on this capability. We're moving on. So we're always evolving on both ends. Right now, one of the latest, we've done 2 major releases recently, right? And one I want to touch upon is our live marketplace offering, right? We've only recently released it to the market, right? And it's getting, a great traction already. And that is something that we're going to evolve significantly over the next, year or so. Right now, the whole area of a marketplace where you could go off the shelf, get your pre-built and what we call live components that are ready to automate most of your use cases. For example, you have a Salesforce Live add-on that's available in our marketplace. Right now, with that, you want to automate Salesforce, you use that, and it's gonna make it almost 10 times, 15 times as fast. Right, because a lot of the Salesforce behaviors come already pre-configured, right? All you have to do is you got to say log into Salesforce and give the credentials to log in, right? You can just go and say, hey, I want to go and create a lead. Go create a lead. So things like that, right? So that is there. We have it for Salesforce. We have it for Oracle Live, MS Dynamics, right? Now we're gonna keep pushing the boundaries on that. We're gonna bring in a lot more for support for all the popular common ERP apps. But on the back of that, we also want to start bringing in, right? We're already in competition or in conversation with a lot of our partners in bringing in some verticals focused add-ons too, right? It could be not just say Salesforce, it could be Salesforce Sales Cloud in a certain configuration for say SaaS products, right? Let's say a certain configuration that is there, or you may be a product company who is actually selling products, right? You can come and build the suits to test your product on our marketplace. Now, what happens as a customer, you can go in and say, I bought this product. Now, typically, my problem is that there is a larger acceptance cycle. It takes me a while to test that. There is a longer kind of every release, when I want to take it, it takes me longer to test. The feedback loop to the provider of the software, right? It also is longer, right? Now it's painful and potent. Now, what we are doing is, you as a software provider can actually build how to test your application, which is not a theory, or which is not like a starter pack, right? Or not like an accelerator, which you still have to configure. This is going to work. You have it live and ready to go, right? Now, as a customer, I can go to nCino, buy nCino. I go to accelq's marketplace, get the nCino add-on. Now I'm ready to test it, right? Now, anytime there's a new release of nCino add-on gets updated too, right? So now it is all going to work really smoothly together, right? You only focus on what is important, and you can, not worry about the other nitty-gritty stuff, which is not really relevant to your business, right? So
that's a very interesting topic that you mentioned. So what you have in mind is basically a marketplace where your partners also can actually publish reusable assets, which can be an automation pack for a specific module. It's mostly like crowdsourced, like you actually get a wealth of test scripts that are already there. You can actually go and buy them as well as publish them based on what that is. That will definitely accelerate your development time, because people spend a lot of time developing scripts, and if something is available off the shelf, that will really help organizations to improve the speed at which they're actually doing test automation. It's a very, very interesting feature, Sriram, well thought of.
Absolutely, right? And also you're spot on, right? You caught on to the two key points already, right? And one of the key points is that, we are an expert in test automation, right? And based on our clientele, we do have good experience, let's say, with the applications that our clients bring to us. For example, we have partnerships with Salesforce, Oracle, MS Dynamics, so we understand those products well. We understand how the clients use them well. But then there are, the world's full of so many other applications, right? And there are a lot of partners, right, who have experience in, working on them, right? And we would never be able to get their subject matter expertise on those kind of applications that they operate, right? And then from their point of view, it is going to be hard for them to build something which is reusable across, a large clients, right? Any client to go and say, if you build something in, say, Selenium, and you go in and the client says, hey, I can't, install and run in Selenium, right? Or, you need change this, change that, etc., right? But now it's on a platform. It's an industry-leading platform. It's already ready to use, right? And so it is win-win. So that's one, right? So it allows everyone, all these kind of, consultancies, you have a lot of interest from, boutique kind of consultants who specialize in certain areas of, certain verticals and certain product lines, right? And they express great interest because they can immediately see the value of it, right? Now, the second aspect of that, like you touched upon, and I want to expand upon a little bit, is not only is it going to reduce the development time, but it's also going to reduce the maintenance effort, because we call it live for a reason, because it's not just because we want to, it's a fancy name. It is truly live in the sense, if there is a newer version of that application, new release comes in. So if I take Salesforce, for example, we guarantee that if we give you, hey, log into Salesforce as a utility ready to use, as a behavior ready to use. Now, if Salesforce status completely down their current login approach, and
Yep.
they reinvent the screen. They add, two checkboxes. They say, I sign my life away, I accept terms and conditions, right? Now, with the next release, if that's what's coming, we would, behind the scenes, make sure that it works so you don't have to update it. You are just going to, you're going to say, hey, I'm on spring 2022, or you're going to say, you know what, I'm on summer 2023. And you will automatically go and say, okay, login behaves this way, let me do it. Right? Now, that is, and this ties back to your first question, is ROI on test automation is very much focused on the creation and the execution, but it forgets maintenance. Right? Now, this also, has a huge impact on that front.
Yep. Thanks, Sriram. We have run short of time. Thank you so much for sharing your experience around test automation, as well as explaining us some of the key capabilities of accelq. You touched upon a lot of topics, starting from end-to-end testing, how AI can be applied, how is it can actually create reusable test cases, as well as you also touched upon how cloud can be used in order to reduce the test execution cycle time. So thank you once again for joining us today, and have a wonderful day.
No worries, George. Thanks for the opportunity. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
See ya.
With this, we have come to the end of this episode of Automation Hangout. Hope you found the session interesting as well as useful. Please do subscribe to our channel to stay abreast with the ever-changing world of automation. Until we meet again, goodbye.